Welcome back, Fantasy Pros. I am Andrew Erickson. Today, breaking down my players to trade before this week's upcoming slate of NFL games. But before I get to my list, unlock the full potential of your team with Trade Central. Pinpoint your strengths, weaknesses, and top trade partners all in one place. Dominate your deals today at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Now, let's get to the trades. Tyrone Tracy, rest of season rank RB22, bye. Tyrone Tracy was the lead rusher for the Giants in Week 9, carrying the ball 16 times for 66 yards. He ran her out on 52% of the dropbacks, led the backfield with a 72% snap rate. The rookie has become the Giants' running back one, has averaged 5 yards per carry this season. Per the FantasyPros strength of schedule tool, the Giants have the 5th most favorable schedule for running backs rest of season. The Giants are going to take on the Panthers before a bye week. Love him against the Panthers. After the bye week, you got the Buccaneers, Cowboys, Saints, Ravens, Falcons, and Colts. Grab the talented rookie running back with a favorable schedule. Guys like Najee Harris, one of the Buccaneers running backs, or this next running back to potentially sell. Rhamondre Stevenson, rest of season rank RB25, sell/hold. Stevenson had 10 carries for just 16 yards against the Titans, but he scored a touchdown on a whopping 74% snap share. He also caught a touchdown. Antonio Gibson only had 1 carry. Stevenson continues his streak as the Amari Cooper of running backs this year. He's 8 games played this season with 5 top 10 finishes, including 3 inside the top 5, but then he also has 3 outside the top 40 overall. Woof. But with 4 touchdowns in his last 2 games, I believe that his stock has hit its peak height. Take advantage if you can move on from Stevenson for a sweet return, because if not, prepare for an upcoming inevitable dud game. On the road in Chicago is not going to be great. Again, Stevenson's production the last week was mostly boosted by his 2 touchdowns because he had just 16 rushing yards. Running backs are usually accompanied by a higher floor, but that's hardly been the case here with Rhamondre. I do admit, though, the ceiling performances are worth holding on to Stevenson if you can't get excited about a deal, given that he has shown the ability to deliver week-winning upside. Regardless, you should still see if you can get an overpay for Rhamondre with guys like Chase Brown, Darnell Mooney, or even his wide receiver doppelganger if you need upside in your wide receiver slot. Amari Cooper, rest of season rank wide receiver 28, bye. Cooper was inactive for Sunday's game against the Miami Dolphins with a wrist injury, and with that, it's another week where his value has fallen, and I want to buy low, because this isn't the correct course of action whenever Cooper busts or disappoints. We buy low, although it comes with the caveat that you want to get on the Amari Cooper roller coaster ride at all. It's a bumpy ride, folks. But note that the Buffalo Bills take on the Colts in the Dome in Week 10. It's a good matchup. Also, Buffalo has been noticeably more pass-heavy in recent weeks. In Week 7, they had a plus 10% pass rate over expectation, compared to the 3% pass rate over expectation weeks 1 through 6. In Week 8, it was plus 1%, and in Week 9, it was back up to plus 6%. Buy pieces of this Bills passing game that is starting to open things up through the air. Note that Keon Coleman might also be dealing with an injury, making Cooper a sharp buy low. The remaining schedule, like I said, at the Colts, Chiefs, then their bye week, and then the 49ers, Rams, Lions, Patriots, and Jets. Send Olave, Evan Ingram, Chuba Hubbard, Javonte Williams, Rachaad White for Amari Cooper. Don't send this next receiver, though, because we want to buy him as well. Marvin Harrison Jr., rest of season rank, wide receiver 20, buy. Harrison had just 34 yards on 2 catches in Week 9, averaging 17 yards per catch. Still, he had 91 air yards, nearly a 70% air yard share, and a 26% target share. Still, it's another bad game from Harrison, who continues to have an up and down rookie season. He lost a fumble in this contest as well. But this is exactly why it's time to strike a deal on Harrison. The Jets are up next, and then there's a bye week, meaning that managers are going to want to sell him after another disappointing outing. But the post-bye week schedule is amazing. Buy MHJ after the bye week. The schedule: at the Seahawks, at the Vikings, Seahawks again, Patriots, at the Panthers, and in the Rams in Week 17. The matchup that he went nuclear in earlier in the season. Spicy. Get the rookie receiver with Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, or this next running back. Rachaad White, rest of season rank RB33, sell/hold. Bucky Irving led the Buccaneers with 7 carries for 24 yards, though they only averaged 3.4 yards per carry. White was the standout in the red zone, scoring a rushing touchdown on just 1 of his 3 carries from inside the 7-yard line. He totaled 19 yards, averaging 6.3 yards per carry. White played 62% of the snaps, while Irving was stuck at 35%, indicating there was a clear lead role for White. In high leverage situations, Sean Tucker was a distant third running back. Still, though, Irving led the backfield in carries in the first half with 5 to White's 2, and White has gotten by the last 3 games with 4 touchdown scores. He's averaged just 11 touches per game over that span. I still believe that Irving is the best pure rushing running back on the Buccaneers, and it's not Rachaad White. So after White scored again, I think you better be selling high after he totaled just 6 touches on Monday Night Football. Although, if you can't sell high on White or flip him for Bucky Irving straight up, I think it's okay to hold as an alternative option. Great schedule for running backs rest of the season. Per the FantasyPros strength of schedule tool, the Bucs have the number 1 schedule for running backs. Also, they have the number 1 schedule for quarterbacks. Still, if I can get an overpay for someone like Josh Downs, Amari Cooper, or this next wide receiver, I'm ready to make the move on Rachaad White. Before I get to the rest of my trades, ready for a fun new way to play fantasy football? Try Smash Up Fantasy Sports' new single-player campaign. It's the world's first single-player fantasy football game. You may remember Smash Up Sports as the fun fantasy football game where you set a lineup like in the traditional fantasy. Then you also get to add Smash Up cards that boost the scores of certain players based on your skill. So what is a single-player fantasy football? It's a tournament-style game in the mold of video games like Street Fighter or Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! The goal is to defeat 6 increasingly harder head coaches in head-to-head fantasy football matchups. And like how those video games, if you beat one head coach, you advance to the next. If not, you play them again the following week. And each coach has a unique playing style and has access to an exclusive Smash card that increasingly powers up their team. So the further you get, the more skill it takes to beat them. Coaches' lineups are set by fantasy experts, including Pat Fitzmaurice and me. So after getting all of my advice, you have the chance to use it against me if you can advance far enough to play me. The game is completely free to play. There's no entry fees or pay to win mechanics. And even better, 3 players who sign up with promo code FantasyPros 2024 and beat the first boss will win $50. See the video description below for more details. Additionally, if you beat all 6 head coaches, you will automatically qualify for the postseason Tournament of Champions, over $10,000 in total cash prizes. So go to smashupsports.com and use promo code FantasyPros 2024 to see if you can be the ultimate champion. Jaylen Waddle, rest of season rank wide receiver 32, buy/hold. Waddle, despite only have 2 catches for -4 yards, still managed to score a red zone touchdown after suffering what looked to be like a serious injury earlier against the Buffalo Bills last week. Still, Dolphins receiver had just a 7% target share, even though he ran a route on 87% of the dropbacks. His final box score looks absolutely miserable because he was on the wrong side of a lateral on the final play of the game, which resulted in a loss of 23 yards. Not what any Waddle manager wants to see. He should have finished with at least just 2 catches for a grand total of 19 yards. But as a Waddle manager, I can't quit him with the Rams up next. This Rams defense has led breakout games to Jameson Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Juwan Jennings, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba just last week. If you're going to sell Waddle, you need to give it at least one more week because the next 3 games are against the Rams, Raiders, and Patriots. Hold high or buy low. Maybe acquire him if you need a receiver help in a package with his next prime sell high running back. Tony Pollard, rest of season rank RB19, sell. Pollard led the Titans, rushing 28 times for 128 yards against the Patriots. He had a long of 32 yards. He also had an 8-yard touchdown call back on offensive holding call. He had 7 rushing attempts and played 86% of the snaps, despite missing practice all week. Chestnut contributed 5 carries for 22 yards, while Tyjae Spears was inactive once again with a hamstring injury. The coaching staff has talked about wanting to limit Pollard, but Spears' inactivity has put them in a tough position. That being said, if Spears returns with tough road matchups on the horizon, the time is perfect to sell high on Pollard. His upcoming next 3 matchups against the Chargers, Vikings, and Texans are not ideal. Per the FantasyPros strength of schedule tool, the Titans have a bottom 5 schedule for fantasy running backs for the rest of the season. Sell high on Tony Pollard for David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, or this next buy low running back, Brian Robinson Jr., rest of season rank RB18. Without Brian Robinson, who missed week 9 with a hamstring injury, the Commanders morphed into a 3-headed monster, with all 3 different running backs seeing at least 20 snaps. Eckler led the way with a 47% snap share. Still, I think I'd use this opportunity to buy low on B-Rob. He's still the red zone guy for the Commanders with the 5th most carries inside the 10-yard line this season, and the Commanders' playoff schedule is great. Features the Saints, Eagles, and Falcons. Washington will be playing in the fantasy football playoffs fresh off a Week 14 bye week. Acquire Brian Robinson with DeAndre Swift, Rhamondre Stevenson, or this next sell high candidate, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, rest of season rank, wide receiver 34, sell. JSN had a breakout game in Week 9, catching 7 of his 13 targets for an outstanding 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had over 200 air yards, a 65% air yard share, and a nearly 40% target share. Look, I had some nice buy/sell calls last week, but selling JSN a week early was not one of them. However, that doesn't mean I'm changing my tune on JSN as a sell candidate. After all, selling wide receiver after 180 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Rams, again, reminds me a lot what happened back in Week 2 with Marvin Harrison, I think is still the right move to make. Keep in mind that both DK Metcalf and Noah Fant were inactive in this last game, and according to Next Gen Stats, Smith-Njigba's air yard share was the highest share in a game by a Seahawks receiver since Week 2 of 2022. Simply put, he was used as a deep threat for the first time. He had 3 catches on 5 deep targets for nearly 100 yards and a touchdown. Smith-Njigba had 0 deep catches on 5 deep targets entering Week 9. He also had yet to record multiple deep catches or eclipse 35 deep receiving yards in his career heading into Week 9. JSN's ADOT in this matchup was over 20 yards. He hasn't surpassed 11 yards average depth of target in any game this season. Maybe his role changes, or maybe it just goes back to him as the underneath option with DK Metcalf operating downfield. Also, the Rams defense has been terrible all season. They've allowed the most deep passing touchdowns. And as I put it out last week, the playoff schedule is not good for the Seahawks. It's something to keep in mind when moving these Seahawks players. Per the FantasyPros strength of schedule tool, Seahawks are tied for the number 32nd ranked schedule for quarterbacks. After their bye week, it's at the 49ers, Cardinals, at the Jets, at the Cardinals, Packers, Vikings, and then at the Bears. You will never get more for Smith-Njigba after this performance. Make trades accordingly. Sell JSN for the farm. Players like Darnell Mooney, Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, Devonta Smith, or my favorite Packers wide receiver, Jaden Reed. Or look to this other shifty slot receiver who just got a major quarterback upgrade, who I maybe was also a week too early on as a buy candidate. Josh Downs, rest of season rank wide receiver 30, buy. Josh Downs was the top target for the Colts in Week 9, catching 6 of his 9 targets for 60 yards, averaging 10 yards a catch with a long of 16. He totaled 68 air yards, 32% air yard share, 33% target share, and an absurd 45% target rate per route run. As he continues to be hyper-targeted, you need to be a buyer of Josh Downs after an overall underwhelming performance on prime time. Look, Colts are not going to face the Vikings defense every single week, but will they have every single week under center? Is Joe Flacco as the quarterback, barring any injury. The schedule isn't ideal for the Colts, but with Michael Pittman continuing to play banged up and Joe Flacco at quarterback, the target volume for Downs will allow him to thrive rest of season. Go get him with JSN. That ties the bow on my player trades lists. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and share with all your friends, just not your league mates. And again, before you go, do not forget, unlock the full potential of your team, Trade Central. Pinpoint your strengths, weaknesses, top trade partners, all in one place. Dominate your deals today at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Thanks for watching, and good luck in the trade streets.